Welcome back to the Make Time for Success podcast. This is episode number 198. If you're wondering, what is the secret to maintaining healthy habits consistently in midlife, this is your episode. My guest expert and the woman who's going to teach us a lot of things today is Holly Bertone, who is coming back to visit the podcast after gracing us with her wisdom in episode number 142, Healing Through Gratitude. Holly Bertone is a former FBI chief of staff for counterintelligence turned certified holistic health coach. She helps midlife women to find the clues to prioritize their health so their high achievement lifestyle no longer clashes with unwanted weight gain, lack of energy, and restless nights. She helps women to combine the principles of high performance and mindset to ditch diet culture and create sustainable results that are an effortless part of their lifestyle. She also is a keynote speaker, #1 Amazon bestselling author, and host of your Midlife Comeback Story podcast. She happens to be a trusted and admired friend and colleague as well. And I'm so thankful that I got to learn from her in this episode. You're going to learn the Rocky framework that she's put together that is both meaningful and helpful. I can't wait for you to hear this material. Let's go listen to it now. Hi, I'm Dr. Christine Lee, and I'm a psychologist and a procrastination coach. I've helped thousands of people move past procrastination and overwhelm so they could begin working to their potential. In this podcast, you're going to learn powerful strategies for getting your mind, body, and energy to work together so that you can focus on what's really important and accomplish the goals you want to achieve. When you start living within your full power, you're going to see how being productive can be easy and how you can create success on demand. Welcome to the Make Time for Success podcast. Hi there, my friends. Today, I'm really excited because I'm welcoming back my friend and colleague, Holly Bertone, to the show. She gave us a wonderful episode quite a long time ago, but we're welcoming her back because she's lit a fire with her new passion for helping midlife women to take back control of their health and their behaviors and their mindset regarding health. And I can't wait to interview her and find out all about this passion and what she's doing with her clients and audience. Welcome back to the show, Holly. Good to see you.
Dr. Christine, thank you so much for having me back on the show. I really appreciate it. And yeah, looking forward to connecting with all your listeners.
Yes. Holly, by the way, is also an established and very masterful public speaker. So we are going to have a wonderful episode today because I know I'm basically going to be sitting back asking questions as my curiosity comes up. But I know Holly is just going to deliver such a wonderful presentation here today. Holly, just get us started with how this all came together, where you decided to focus on helping women in this particular subject.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to when I was about 10 years old. And I promise it's not going to take long, but I'm going to put a really pretty red bow on this because it's all going to make sense. And you're going to be like, oh my God, this is it.
Awesome.
So yeah, when I was 10 years old, one of my favorite things to do was I would take 3 different 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles. So 3 different puzzles, 1,000 pieces each, with this huge dining room table. And I would dump them out, mix them up, and put them together. Because putting one together wasn't challenging enough. So I had to put 3. That's what 10-year-olds do, right? Nerd alert. But that's how my brain has always worked. I love looking at messes and putting them back together. So, and I know that's near and dear to your heart as well. And fast forward, the pinnacle of my career was when I was the chief of staff for the FBI's counterintelligence program management office. And to get to that position, they had actually brought me on post 9/11 when, if you remember back in the day, the internet was still pretty new. Databases and programs and systems were still pretty new. And all of our government agencies were very archaic. The FBI was one of the best in terms of being archaic with our technology. So I came in to look at, so this was after the 9/11 Commission report came out from Congress and after the WMD Commission report came out from Congress. And they're like, there's a lot of pieces within the FBI that don't talk to each other, that need to be more cohesive. So that's what I did for 4 different programs. I would look at the mess, put it back together from a project management perspective. And then they brought me on as the chief of staff for the counterintelligence program management office, which was a dream come true because I got to play with data and analytics and look at trends all day long. It was literally a dream come true. But then the short version, breast cancer, autoimmune disease, and really my health just tanked for several years, and to the point where I needed to resign from the FBI and really just focus on my health. And I decided at that point, after a lot of marinating in my misery, that I really wanted to become a health coach. So I became a certified holistic health coach just to heal myself. I wasn't even thinking of anyone else. And I'm thinking like maybe a 10% improvement. And what I found was that going back to the basics, the nutrition and exercise and sleep and, different lifestyle factors, it moved the needle to a degree, but there were certain things that were missing. And that's when I put on the detective hat to go find the clues to figure out what was missing. And then over time, between being a health coach and, working with gratitude, which I know we had the previous episode, and then coming back to my roots as a holistic health coach, what I found is that we get to this place, and I work with midlife women, but this is going to resonate for anyone listening, is that it doesn't matter how old you are, but we get to this place in life where we come here with certain beliefs, with certain traumas and stories and patterns. And, we try to make these changes to get healthier, but then it doesn't work. So that's where I really come in, is to look at the mess, right? Look at all of the different pieces that, my clients bring to the table and say, okay, let's turn this into the masterpiece. Like, let's put this puzzle back together. And that brings us to present day with the pretty red bow.
Wonderful. I love the mess framework that you actually are enlivened by looking at all the different things all together on a table. I love the 3 puzzle image and memory, and that you help women make sense of what they're doing. What do you find are the most common mistakes? I don't know if there's a better word, but what are the things that women are doing maybe innocently that are somehow sabotaging their efforts to do things in a healthier, more productive way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what I found is that, first of all, 2/3 of women age 40 to 60 are clinically overweight, and 92% of diets fail. So there's obviously a disconnect there. But what makes matters worse is that you look at the diet industry. It's a multi-billion dollar industry. And it's set up in a way that only 8% succeed. There's something wrong there. There's something wrong. Why are we not asking questions why this isn't working? And why it's leaving 92% of us like, okay, this didn't work. Not only did I not lose the weight, but I gained some back, number one. And number two, how is it that 2/3 of us are clinically overweight? So that's where I want to okay, let's go back to the basics and let's start, putting that detective hat on. Let's start looking back to that root cause. And really the biggest mistake that I see is that women focus on the quick fix. What do I need to do? And it's not intentional. It's just, I need to lose the weight. I've got this thing, this, whatever it is. It's a wedding. It's a graduation. It's I want to go out and I want to wear my fancy dress and I'm embarrassed about my arm. So I got to put a sweater on, or my jeans don't fit anymore. And it's not even just always about the weight. Sometimes it's just the distribution. Like we get to a certain age and things just, gravity takes over. You're like, wait a second, they are fitting the same, and the scale hasn't budged. So there's something that, or even like a diagnosis, either they get diagnosed with something or a loved one gets diagnosed with something, someone passes away. So there's some kind of event that triggers this. I need to do this. And they go after, what do I need to do to lose the weight? So the focus is on that number between the two big toes, the scale. And I think that's one mistake. I'm like putting all the mistakes into one, but that's one mistake right there, is that the number on the scale does not dictate health. It's an indicator, but it does not dictate health. There's a lot of other factors. I was 110 pounds and a competitive athlete when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So exhibit A, I'm here to tell you that that number on the scale does not mean that you're healthy inside. So that's number one. And then number two is, okay, what do I need to do? And what do I need to, what foods do I need to eliminate? Or, how can I limit my calories? Calorie restriction is really big. So those are two of the biggest mistakes that I see. And I want to jump into the base camp cycle, because this is really, I really see this over and over again, is that and I know you're going to love this. I know your listeners are going to love this, because this is a lot of where your work is like, oh yeah, I totally see this, is you have this thing, you get excited to start to do the thing, right? And it's almost like a New Year's resolution. You get excited as you think, you're like, I want to accomplish this. And that excitement is going to carry you for about 2 weeks. And you're going to do the thing for about 2 weeks. And you're excited, maybe get a cute little new outfit or a new pair of shoes. But then it gets hard, or an obstacle happens. And you're like, okay, I'm going to rely on willpower. So we're starting at the base of the mountain and we're trying to climb this mountain. So we're excited for 2 weeks. The obstacle happens. And then you're like, oh, I can rely on willpower. Well, willpower is not going to get you very far, because the second another obstacle happens, and I'm not even talking anything big. I'm talking, it's a rainy day. The dog poops on the carpet. You get in a fight with your spouse, or your kid forgot their homework. Something small triggers it. And you're just like, this is too hard. I'm just going to start on Monday. And then guess what? Monday never happens. And instead of climbing the mountain, right back at base camp. So that is, I think, in a nutshell, one of the biggest mistakes. And, things like procrastination comes in, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go do this instead of working out, or I'm going to go do this instead of meal planning this week, or I'm going to go do that. It just, we find all of the excuses to make rather than doing the thing that we need to do. And when it's not a part of our life, like a part of our livelihood, it's really hard to do it. And I almost like to think about when you were in love, like the first time, like not even the first time you were in love, but when you were in love and you like kind of first met that person and you're really excited to spend time together, and your friends were like, oh, we should go do the movies or go do this or that. And you're like, no, I am spending time with my sweetie. Like, there is nothing in your way that's going to take you away from spending your time with your sweetie. Well, this is how we need this to be, because if it's hard, we don't want to do it. If it requires effort, we don't want to do it. If we hate it, we don't want to do it. If we're starving, we don't want to do it. So how do we turn this into something like that love, like that first love? Like, I can't wait to wake up in the morning and do the thing. And when your excitement level is there, and even like the excitement will wear off, right? It always does. But when you have that level of sustainability, that it is a part of you, that's when you can get these not just the habits, but to become an entire lifestyle change. And that's when it sticks. And that's what makes it permanent. And when you ask what's the difference between the woman in that 8% that does have those healthy habits with her weight and her nutrition and her exercise and her health versus the 92 that continue to struggle, that's it right there.
Okay. At this point, thank you for that beautiful description of the base camp cycle. I love that. And how we're always going to be drawn back to the baseline when we're relying on just like moment to moment motivation, finding the reason to go today and not having it be part of our lives, like you beautifully said. But then I thought to myself, well, Holly's the kind of person who threw 3,000 pieces of a puzzle on a table and mixed it all up and got pleasure out of that. So I'm assuming you're very high willpower, high personally motivated person. So did you yourself have any difficulty making these behaviors part of your life? That's the first question.
Okay. Yeah. So back in my 20s, I was 40 pounds overweight. And when I lost the weight, I did it I didn't even change my nutrition at the point. I just did it by exercise. And I was in my 20s, or like early 30s. So it was a time where your metabolism is still working in your favor. So the way that I did it just was because my metabolism was working in my favor. But I've been able to maintain a healthy weight from that point, from being a competitive athlete to breast cancer to autoimmune disease to being very sick to now being very healthy. And with only a 10-pound difference, kind of here and there in fluctuations and things like that. So I have been able to maintain a healthy weight. And I think that piece of it is because it was a part of my lifestyle. But I also am one of those people where things sometimes come easy, things sometimes don't come easy. And when they don't come easy, yeah, I'm not going to let it go. I am going to be consistent on a daily basis until I get it.
Okay. So then if some of our listeners or all of our listeners are not necessarily a self-driven, highly motivated person, what are some things that we can share with them that will help them to see themselves as someone who can implement these techniques and make healthy habits part of their life instead of a day-to-day kind of a thing? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll get into the framework, but I really want to set it up with this is that we bring to the table all of those stories and beliefs and patterns and traumas and all of these things that we consider limitation. Some people are, and I know, like, I was like, oh, I got thick thighs and big boned, even as a healthy weight, quote unquote, like, still having these stories about my body. So I understand what it's like to come to the table with some of this. Like some of us were told we were the pretty one or the smart one, or the class clown or the good for nothing one. And we have these stories that we have just carried our entire lives. So the first step is to really understand that we are creating from our past. And Albert Einstein says that everything that's created is created twice. So first it's created in our mind and then it manifests physically. So if you're trying to create and you're creating from a disempowered state, from that place of, I don't feel good enough or I don't feel worthy enough or I've always failed in the past, and you're creating from that space, well, the future becomes what we feed it. So if we feed our future from a disempowered state, well, guess what it's going to look like? So the goal here is to really go back and look at these stories. And what I like to say too is so if you can think about a coin, right? We are the same person. So you've got all of these stories and limitations and all of the I can't do it's that we bring to the table. But what if we could just take that and turn it around to all of the positives? The I can do it, the I have what it takes to do this. And because we're the same person, it's just two sides of the same coin. And I think we forget that. I think that there's so much negative that we like to focus on. We forget that there's also the really good side about us. Like you said, like I'm very tenacious. That is, but that can also be, right? Like that can also be a little bit of a poison. So we come to the table with these two sides of the coins. And I think that's really important to remember. So with that framework, I'd love to get into the Rocky inspired framework. And I named it after the best comeback movie of all time. And, circa 1976. I love the movies from the 70s and 80s. And so I was like, this is the perfect way to name this framework. So it's ROCKY. And R is rear view mirror. And that is really reframing and rediscovering your past from a different perspective and releasing that tether that you have on all of those negative beliefs and limiting beliefs that are holding you back. And we can't jump into our DeLorean and go back and change the past. But what we can do is view our past from that place of forgiveness with the other person, with the situation, and more importantly, with ourselves. So it's forgiveness, it's a place of compassion, and really finding that peace and that love. Showing up in a place of, yeah, I can do this. Even though this is a part of my past, it's what made me who I am today. And where we can show up and grow from those lessons and release those tethers from all of those negative beliefs and stories, that really sets us up to be able to do what we need to do. Because it's no longer holding us back and we're no longer going back to those old habits. So
Beautiful.
That's our rearview mirror. O is, I like to say, own your ship with a P, like a boat. We'll keep it G-rated. And this one is personal responsibility. And I'd love to share this story because this is really how I got to this place. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, it was on my 39th birthday. And I went to that first appointment with the doctor. And she put her hand on my knee. And I remind you, I'm 110 pounds. I'm a competitive triathlete, right? I'm like, this is just old people get breast cancer. Like, how did this even happen, right? So this is my framework going into this meeting. And she put her hand on my knee. And you want to know what she told me? She said, lightning struck. And I needed to hear that. I needed to know, like, how did this even happen? But it was actually two of the worst words that a doctor can say, because it took all of the responsibility away from me and it placed this disease on this random act. And because of that, I was like, oh, well, lightning struck. It just happened. Like, the doorbell rang and I opened it up and there was breast cancer. It was my unlucky day. So that's the story in my head for years. I didn't make any changes at all. And I kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. My body was already hospitable to a disease, meaning more disease is going to happen. And that's what happened. And it wasn't until I started really going down the rabbit hole and looking into health and looking at it from a holistic perspective that I realized that disease is end state inflammation. So disease happens after a storm of lifestyle and nutrition and environmental and all different kinds of factors. It's not just you wake up one day and open the door and it's your unlucky day. There's a disease waiting for you on the other side. There's a lot of different factors that go into play. And what I learned is that looking back, and not from a place of blame or shame or judgment, I don't want to go there with anyone. Like, this is not the place to go. We go from this place forward because we've already forgiven our past, right? But looking at it for me, like, oh, gee, Holly, maybe eating an entire sleeve of Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies isn't a great idea, like at a time. Drinking 6 cans of Coca-Cola a day isn't such a great idea. Living a high stress, adrenaline junkie kind of lifestyle probably isn't such a good idea. And that's what my lifestyle was when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So looking at it from the perspective of, again, there's a lot of different factors, but I have control over so much of this. It's not a guarantee, but it's actually going to minimize your risk of these diseases. When you look at things like nutrition, exercise, minimizing stress, getting good quality sleep, spending time in the quiet, like all of these things that you can do, that you have agency over, that you can take responsibility for your health and say, from this point forward, I can make really good decisions for myself. So that is O, own your ship with a P.
I love this. And I love how you generously shared with us the lightning struck story, because I could see any of us getting that kind of feedback from any number of people and us just quickly saying, oh, then there's nothing I can do about it. When everything is connected with everything, as you so eloquently stated, we have so much control over what is happening with inflammation, with diet, with our routines. And I think that doctor was trying to make you feel better. And it probably
Absolutely.
did in the very short term. But I love how you turned that around and said, you know what? I still am a host for disease at this point if I don't change my patterns and how I take ownership for what's going on, ownership for the space, right?
Yeah.
And for how I'm the host, how I choose to be the host of my body and my health. I love this. So keep going, please.
Yeah. And I think too, it's a conversation. I mean, it's looking at the entire medical system. I mean, it's you go in with the symptom, they give you a pill. There's not a lot of conversation around factors that you have control over. Nutrition's the biggest one. I mean, nutrition is hands down the biggest needle mover. But yeah, I mean, you have so much agency in your life.
Yes.
So we got C is create your future self. And the first two is what I like to call the U-ing, Y-O-U. This is the doing. This is actually when we get into, okay, what do I need to do to become a healthier version of myself? And again, a lot of women focus on the weight. That's the one that's screaming the loudest, but it's more than that. It's energy, it's sleep, it's actual metabolic health. It's making sure that, you're looking at this from a long-term perspective. Because again, I work with women in midlife, middle-aged women. So we're looking at, okay, I'm going to be in my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. We're looking at these years ahead of us. And those years are going to work for us or against us. And we can be that woman in her 70s and 80s who's running circles around all the other ones. The one who, when the family calls and says, hey, we're going to the amusement park. Do you want to come? She's like, yeah, let's go. Bags are packed. And she's running around the amusement park. I want to be that woman. Like, I want to be that way when I'm 80. I want to be able to do the things and not be stuck at home because my body is broken. I want to be the 80-year-old woman who's tripping over her dog and doesn't fall because she's done balance activities, right? Like, these are the things that we don't think of. You think about squats. How many people say, I hate squats, right? Like, it's just,
I love squats. I happen to love.
I do too. But I hear it all the time. I hate squats. Well, think about it this way. Let's say you're 50 years old. And let's say you live to 85, so 35 years. In 35 years, we go to the bathroom, I don't know, maybe 8 times a day. And as we get older, pelvic floor issues, probably a little more, but just on average, 8 times a day. So 8 times a day times 35 years, you're going to be doing 100,000 squats, getting up and down on the toilet for those 35 years. So whether you like to do squats or not, like, if you don't like to do squats, they're going to be a part of your life. And if you do them now, they're going to be a lot easier to get up and down the toilet when you're 80. So it's looking at things like balance, it's strength training, it's stretching, it's, making sure your muscles are strong, making sure your bones are strong. It's looking at this from a long-term perspective and not just, I want to lose 20 pounds. And when we can do that, we're setting ourselves up for the best years of our life. And the thing that I hear so often is, oh my goodness, Holly, I have so many fires to put out. I can't think 15 minutes ahead, let alone 15 years ahead. And that is a reframe that we really need to work on, because those years come fast. And if you start today, your future self is really going to thank you.
Yes, I have recently made those mindset shifts for myself. And I've been trying to share that message myself with friends and my audience as well, friends in my audience as well, because I think we don't often jump ahead and envision ourselves 30 years from now. But I agree with you. It's going to come super fast.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how it will go. And I loved how you said the years can either be with you or against you, because I find in my own mind that I've already committed that they're going to be with me.
Yeah.
And that I'm operating from the framework, we're only going to get more vibrant, that this isn't a period of decline ahead. This is a period of strengthening and enlivening, and protection in the best way, right? Not protecting against danger, but just protection because I love my body, I love my life, and let's get everybody else, right? I would love to run circles around other people, but I would love other people to be running with me
Yes.
as well. So I'm all with you. So grateful for your explanations. Let's go to K.
Yes. So K is keep the vision, not the view. So this is what I like to say. The daily obstacles are going to happen all the time. It is a 100% guarantee in life that there's going to be something that happens. It's raining outside. The dog poops on the floor. You're washing dishes and you get that food stuff and you're like, oh, I'm running late for work and now I have to change clothes. It doesn't matter what it is. It's always going to be something. And when we're in that state of a dysregulated nervous system, when we're in that state where we're full on in the sympathetic stress state and we're just running from fire to fire to fire, what happens is that we can only see what's right in front of us and we can't keep that vision. And those obstacles happen. Like I said, it's so easy to go back to those old habits and those old patterns. So number one, it's about learning to coexist with the obstacles and with the stress so that it doesn't hijack your life. So that when they do happen, it's like, oh, okay, this is just, I had a client that told me she came back from a weekend of unexpected family drama. And she's like, number one, she goes, I didn't get, family drama. Like it's easy to just, they suck you in. Like they pull you in big time. They want you to join and spiral. Like that's what family drama does. And she's like, I didn't get sucked into the drama. I did not spiral. I maintained, like I was just cool, calm, and collected the entire time. And I didn't stress eat. And I was like, this is what it's about. It's not about like all of these things that we think that we have to do. It's about who you become. This is the you-ing, back to the you, Y-O-U-ing. And when this is a part of your lifestyle, when you actually have that regulated nervous system and you can look at these obstacles as, it happens, but I'm not going to spiral from it. I'm not going to stress eat from it. I'm not going to comfort eat. I'm not going to say, oh, I had the longest day at work. I deserve a reward. So I'm just going to drive by the fast food on the way home. I'm just going to drive by Chick-fil-A on the way home or just get some ice cream on the way home. Right? These are the decisions that you make when you're running from fire to fire. So that's number one. But number two, this is kind of cool. So we have this term in the FBI. It's called tripwires. And we use it a lot in counterintelligence. And it's basically set up so that it's literally that, like someone trips over the wire. You're like, oh, I caught you, And that's what this really is setting up a system in your life so that, when it's really important, like when you're on travel, and you have these tripwires set up so that okay, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm not going to react. And that's part of it too, is not just coexisting with the stress, but it's really being able to almost predict what's going to happen so that you don't react. And then when you do, if you do decide to, it happened and you do kind of spiral down that road again, you're able to catch yourself immediately and you have the tools to pull yourself back up. A perfect example of this, I was at a speaking engagement at MIT in Boston. And the plane, so not just that, but I had to get back the next day because I had another speaking engagement in my hometown. So literally back to back. So the travel was tight, really tight. So I needed to make sure everything was working and I had multiple layers going on to make sure that if something happened, I was prepared. Well, the flight was 3 hours delayed. And it was one of those delays that every 20 minutes they kept saying, oh, it's going to be about 20, 30 minutes. So it wasn't like we're going to be delayed for 3 hours. It was constant. And I just found a spot, pulled up my laptop and just worked. I didn't think anything of it. But it was interesting because as I'm watching everyone reacting, they're screaming at the attendants. you don't understand. I've got somewhere important to go. Well, we all kind of have somewhere important to go, right? It's a mechanical thing. They kind of have to fix it. And there's people to fix it, like not the one standing at the desk, and not just that. This is, 8 o'clock in the morning. They're running to Dunkin' Donuts. They're coming back with their bags of donuts and bagels. They're going to the bar and drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's because we don't know how to handle this kind of stress, right? And I see this all the time. So it's not just being able to coexist, but it's also being able to almost predict and have those tripwires set up in your life so that when something does happen, you don't spin out of control. You don't reward E. You don't comfort E. You're just like, okay, I'm good. We're good. So that is K. Keep the vision, not the view.
I love this. I love this on so many levels. And I'm thinking about how easy it is for me and for probably many of our listeners about the comfort eating and just the stress reaction, that it's like a tripwire in the other direction where something happens and you immediately think, oh, let me find what's in the fridge, kind of thing. So I love that you're putting intentionality in the coaching and with the support of your clients so that they can have support for themselves when the stressor comes. Love this. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah. So R is rearview mirror. O is own your ship with a P. C is create your future self. K is keep the vision, not the view. And then Y is come back home to you. And this is, let's go back to the Wizard of Oz, right? You go behind the curtain. You're like, oh, we had it inside of us all along. So this is really coming back home to you and realizing that the different side of the coin, you've got all of these stories and beliefs and patterns coming into this that were negative. But now you're like, you know what? I'm the same person. And I'm just flipping it and I'm focusing on those qualities that make me the amazing human being who I am and going through this process to get there. But more importantly than that, it's not just coming back home to you. It's the ripple effect and it's the legacy. Because now it's about showing up for your spouse, for your kids, for your parents, for your, if you're in a leadership position at work, for your team, for your coworkers, for all of the people in your life and showing them what is possible. And I've got a great example of this. I had a client who she was getting back into exercising and she was trying to get her teenage daughter to join her. And she kept saying, almost like, not begging, but hey, will you join me? Will you join me? Will you join? And, teenagers, they're like, not cool. And the second she stepped into her power, this is about 6 weeks into the program, but she stepped into her power. And it was so cool because she said her teenage daughter was there with her friend. And she was like, you know what? I was just like, I just decided to just work out, just do my thing. And both of the girls were like, can we join you? And it's such a subtle shift, but it makes all the difference in the world. And, teenage girls, they got to be cool in front of their friends. So it wasn't just her. It was her being able to be the example for her daughter and her daughter's friend that, hey, you know what? I'm in the middle of the living room. It's in the middle of the afternoon. I'm here getting healthy and I'm taking care of myself. Yeah. And I think that legacy piece of it is so important too, because it isn't just us. There are so many more people in our lives that we touch.
This is the point where I start to feel the feelings, right? Because it's so true. And we can affect other people quite quickly with a shift in our own energy. And what you said is so beautiful about we're just returning to the awesomeness of you, which was always there. And it was just covered up by all these old stories and traumas and circumstances and short-term views kind of a thing. And when we're working with our amazingness, it's a lot easier to do the positive, healthy things. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
With that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
As opposed to the downtrodden, overwhelmed, burdened part of us, which is also like these are real parts, and they're no joke. But that amazing part of you is always there. Has always been there. You're the Rocky. Holly has done such a beautiful job of reminding us about that source that is within you. So thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
And thank you for all of your wisdom and putting all of your life into this work. it's so apparent how it makes so much sense to you. And it's part of your belief about how things should go. And you've healed your own body from this, which is amazing. And how has this affected you in your life, if you don't mind putting a bow on top of the bow, in terms of what have you discovered about yourself and the power of your body?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, I never thought I would ever be able to achieve this type of vibrant health, but it is possible. I took a longer road, I think, than most people, but I also learned all the lessons that I get to help others now take a shorter path. I mean, it is a long-term solution, but we can certainly take a shorter path. But I always thought when I turned 50, even I'm like, how is it that I feel like I'm 50, but I feel like I'm in an 80-year-old woman's body? Like I was starting to feel old and I wasn't okay with that. And, I really started diving into this and I'm realizing like, no, we actually can age backwards, and I think the biggest compliment for me is when someone thinks I'm still in my 30s, they're like, oh, this is awesome. But more importantly is when someone says, hey, Holly, do you want to ... I get to choose based on if I want to do the thing or not based on whether my body says I can or I can't.
Yeah.
And I keep that thinking, I want to still do this when I'm in my 80s. I still want to be able to say yes because I want to say yes.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So powerful. Such an important message. Thank you again for doing this important work. Can you explain to us how our listeners can follow you, work with you? What do you have available?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best place, you're here listening to this podcast. So the best place is just go on your podcast player, look up Your Midlife Comeback Story podcast. And that is mine. And I would actually write this number down. Go to episode 136. This episode is called Uncover Covert Weight Loss Using FBI Tactics. Really cool episode. I know you're going to love it. And then come say hello on Instagram at holly.bertone. Say hello in the DMs. I answer all of my messages. And we can definitely talk about if you want to work together or just say hello and let me know what you thought of the episode.
Or say thank you for this beautiful, beautiful episode. Yeah, absolutely. Holly and I are always connected. So all of this information will be in the show notes. I highly recommend listening to Holly's beautiful podcast. Stay connected with her. And we all have so much to learn from you, Holly. Thank you so much again for all of your time, energy, and your power.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
All right, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode and what you're hearing on the podcast, please do leave me a review for the Make Time for Success podcast. I haven't asked for one of those in a long time, and I think it's about time. And I will see you next week when we have another episode on the show. Thanks so much for being here. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make Time for Success podcast. If you enjoyed what you've heard, you can subscribe to make sure you get notified of upcoming episodes. You can also visit our website, maketimeforsuccesspodcast.com, for past episodes, show notes, and all the resources we mention on the show. Feel free to connect with me over on Instagram too. You can find me there under the name Procrastination Coach. Send me a DM and let me know what your thoughts are about the episodes you've been listening to. And let me know any topics that you might like me to talk about on the show. I'd love to hear all about how you're making time for success. Talk to you soon.